Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with The Box, number 2 of Artur Rodzínski recordings. Apparently, these have been much anticipated because Sony's released both boxes, the New York Film box and this box, in rather rapid succession, all things considered. And this particular box has 13 CDs and consists of the earlier Rodzinski material, the Cleveland recordings, which date from around 1939 to 1942. Not a very long period, but they made a lot of recordings back then. They really did. And the Cleveland Orchestra, at the time that Rodzinski had it, was sort of in a transition-y period of its early pre-Zell era. It was smaller than the other major orchestras. It didn't have as big a string section, which is sort of to the good in some of these recordings because it allows for an extra transparency. And the performances themselves are surprisingly fine. They're surprisingly fine in an unadventurous sort of way. What I mean is that they don't do anything grotesque. Rodzinski was grotesque, like showed up at concerts with a pistol and stuck it on the podium while he conducted as if he was going to kill somebody. You could get away with such crap in those days. And he became like a religious nut, and he had all kinds of personal issues. He could scream and carry on like a lunatic, and people sort of put up with it because conductors were supposed to do that. But his interpretations were generally direct, refreshing, swift, incisive, really nice. Frankly, they were just really enjoyable to listen to. And the cool thing about this particular set is that it's like all sort of major pieces in Blockbuster repertoire. You'll see what I mean when we go through it. It's really kind of amazing. There's like nothing in here you wouldn't want to hear one of. Not that the performances are all equally wonderful, and the sound from the 1930s and early 40s is iffy. It really is. Rodzinski supposedly was dissatisfied with the sonic results because the quality of the pressings was lousy, especially in the war period. But at the same time, they've cleaned them up very nicely here. I will say that. The tutis, the loud sections are still congested, and, there's a limited dynamic range, but the clarity is really excellent throughout most of these performances. So, if you're a historical recordings fan, I know a lot of people have been waiting for this. You should just grab it. There's no question about that. But let's see what's in here. I can't go, unfortunately. These are original jackets, those ugly original jacket things, these things, because... let's see. Yes, because the discs have often additional tchotchkes stuck in there. So if I just go by the disc, you're not going to hear about all the music. I got to do the booklet, which has a lovely essay by James North about Rodzínski and his tenure in Cleveland, which didn't last very long. And let's start where we start. First, Ravel. Daphnis and Chloe's Second Suite, Rhapsody Espagnole, Alborada del Gracioso. I like the Alborada. It's a very measured tempo for this piece, which allows for a great deal of clarity and nuance. It's a lot of fun. The others are, nice, zippy Ravel things. Yes, Mildred is sitting down there waiting for me to, throw her little tchotchke here. Mildred, you ready? You ready to go? Go! There. Now she's happy. The second disc has Debussy's La Mer, and really cool scenario for orchestra by Jerome Kern, based on Showboat, the tune. This was a Rodzinski, the musical, the tune. This was a Rodzinski commission, actually. He told Kern to do it, and Kern did it, and it's really cool. It's 21 minutes of fun, enjoyable music, effectively arranged. The La Mer is okay. It's not horrible. It's not really particularly special. Then we get Shostakovich's Fifth. Now, this was recorded, 1942. It's kind of remarkable. It's a brand new work. Let's not forget in those days. It was only a few years old. And my parents had this recording of Shostakovich's Fifth. It's the one I first heard. We've had a big back and forth here about people who imprint on early recordings and how it becomes their personal reference. No. That was never my case. Never. In fact, I used to go back and listen to the imprint recordings and be shocked at how bad most of them were. So that was not my thing. But it is for some people, I understand it. This was the first Shostakovich fifth I ever heard. And it's good. I mean, it's really good. And when you consider just how fresh and new it was, I mean, that's kind of exciting. I mean, that has a certain historical provenance, doesn't it? It's a traditional triumphant finale, by the way. There's none of the, socialist, realist angst and undercurrents of unease and misery. And it's just straight socialist, realist triumph. And then we've got, let's see, Strauss, Till Eulenspiegel, the Salome's Dance, and the Rosenkavalier Waltzes, which is Rodzinski's arrangement. He actually arranged the Rosenkavalier Waltzes, so that's also kind of nice to have him doing it. It was kind of his piece. And then we've got, let's see, Tchaikovsky, Romeo and Juliet, a really quick Romeo and Juliet, yes, and the 1812 Overture. I mean, right. You don't have a cadet. You have a bass drum that's going whack, whack, whack. Not always where Tchaikovsky wanted it to. The March Slav, another very swift performance that, and Dawn on the Moskva River by Mussorgsky. And then on CD 6, Sibelius, Symphony Number 5. This is not a good Sibelius fifth. I don't care what anybody says. It's sonically, it's just not good. It really isn't. It sounds really thin and kind of ragged in places. And that's the way it goes. And you've got Armas Jarnfeld's Preludium, that little tiny thing people used to truck out once in a while when you needed another Finnish thing. And Finlandia. Well, Finlandia is better. Finlandia has a nice little rasp to the brass at the beginning. Tchaikovsky 5, that's CD 7. This is Tchaikovsky 5 with the big cut in the finale. I have no patience for performances that make that cut. I mean, they should have known better even then. Even if Tchaikovsky theoretically said, oh, what the hell, cut it, because he did in some of his performances when he was first trying the piece out, and it has been reinstated by Marcus Poschner horribly, ridiculously, outrageously. No. I mean, it's an exciting performance in Tchaikovsky's fifth otherwise, but, that really has dated it. Shostakovich Symphony Number 1. You get 2 Shostakoviches. That's really kind of cool. So that's a good performance. It's fast and zippy and exciting. And Scheherazade, we get on CD 9. See what I mean by it's all big repertoire. It's really like good stuff. Scheherazade and the variations by Jaromir Weinberger on Under the Spreading Chestnut Tree. Boy, is that a rarity that we really ought to bring back. It's a lovely work. It's a terrific work. What's about 16 minutes here? Yes. Variations in Fugue on an old English tune. Just a delightful piece of music. It's got a piano in it. It's really enjoyable. The pianist is Boris Goldovsky, in case you were curious. The Scheherazade is a exciting Scheherazade. I mean, it really is. It's just, what can I tell you? You don't stop and say, oh, well, here's something enormously personal or insightful in that sense. It's just wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. And that's what we get. Beethoven's First Symphony, thrilling finale. My goodness, they play well. And Mendelssohn's A Midsummer Night's Dream music, charming performance of music that never fails. I mean, has there ever been a bad recording of the Mendelssohn Midsummer Night's Dream music? I mean, really? Come on. Strauss Ein Heldenleben. They must have beefed up the orchestra for that with Joseph Fuchs on violin playing Mrs. Helden, whatever her name is. And the Der Freischütz Overture is a coupling. I like fast Heldenlebens. You can't play it fast enough in my book. This was, of course, competing, or soon to compete, would be the first Reiner recording in Pittsburgh. And Cleveland and Pittsburgh had kind of a rivalry because I don't know if you know the geography, but they're right next to each other. They're within, a short drive between Cleveland and Pittsburgh. When you go over the Ohio border into Ohio from Pittsburgh, you go through Pittsburgh, and then the next big town is Cleveland. And so they're 45 minutes? What is it? It's not a long ride. I've done the ride a few times. It's not a long ride. And, Pittsburgh and Cleveland were the sort of jumping place orchestras for the big three, for Boston, New York, and Chicago in those days, or Philadelphia, pardon me. It was Boston, New York, Philadelphia. Chicago was kind of also the larger second tier. But those were the big three. And you started, in Pittsburgh and went to Cleveland, and then you went to like New York, Boston, or Philadelphia, or maybe Chicago, if you weren't as lucky. So there you go. I mean, but it's remarkably exciting. It's amazing how many early recordings there were of Ein Heldenleben, isn't it? I mean, from Metropolis and Reiner and this one, and Strauss had done some, and Mengelberg did a few. And I mean, when you consider, what a big, difficult work it is, an opulent work that, the technology of the day couldn't possibly do any justice to, but it existed in multiple recordings. Then I've got the Berlioz Symphony Fantastique, which is best because the slow movement is only 13 minutes and a bit. That works quite well. There were quite a few of those too. Metropolis did it. He did it. Yeah. Okay. And then CD 13, the Schoenberg and Berg Violin Concerti, both with Louis Krasner. This is a bit of a historical artifact. The Schoenberg is the Metropolis recording, which is in the Metropolis box. It is quite famous. And the Berg is with Cleveland and Rodzínski. One of the earliest recordings of that work. I think it may have been the earliest recording of that work. Let's see. For the two recordings of disc 2, for the first movement, Allegro, no, it's different. Anyway, so there you go. And then we've got, as a coupling, as a Philip at the end of those two gnarly masterpieces, the Mendelssohn Violin Concerto with Nathan Milstein and Cleveland. And this is interesting. It says here the two recordings of disc 2 for the first movement, Allegro molto appassionato. This is on 78s, remember, from February 22, 1942, turned out to be rather long for 78 RPM. When Milstein re-recorded the same piece in 1945 with Bruno Walter in the New York Phil, it was much quicker. It was 4 minutes and 6 seconds rather than 4 minutes and some odd seconds. And how many seconds was it? Does it say? Yes, 4 minutes and 25 seconds. 4 minutes and 15 and 4 minutes and 25, not 4 minutes and 33 seconds. Ha ha, take that, John Cage. So yeah, he had sped up, and they claim here that he probably sped up to better accommodate a 78 RPM side, that this performance therefore more accurately reflects his preferred tempi. Well, it may or it may not, but it's always good to have more Milstein, really, and Mendelssohn was one of his calling card works. So there you go. I mean, it's really quite a nice selection of stuff, an interesting selection of stuff. Everything is a big piece. Like I said, there's even, and the interesting things, the less common things for those days, the Shostakovich symphonies, the Weinberger, the Berg, God knows, I mean, are all like really important and useful discographic entities. Is that the word? I don't know. So here you go. Artur Rodzínski and the Cleveland Orchestra. A really good set. Fun set. Just enjoyable to go back and dip into. And that's what I've been doing. And it's been a great pleasure. And it will be for you too. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks so much for joining me. Take care.